Imagine a quiet roadside diner on a dusty Wyoming highway, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with diesel fumes. A place familiar to truckers seeking a slice of Americana. Now picture this calm shattered as a gang of ruthless bikers rolls in, ready to terrorize the locals, bullying a heavy-set truck driver they assume will be an easy victim. But what happens next will leave your jaw on the floor. They unknowingly provoke a seasoned Delta Force veteran who quickly reminds them never to judge a book by its cover. Packed with adrenaline-fueled action, grit, and classic American justice, this showdown is one you won't forget. If you love powerful stories of underestimated heroes, righteous payback, and old-school courage, hit that subscribe button right now, because you won't want to miss how this incredible standoff ends. The mid-afternoon sun hung high over a dusty roadside truck stop in rural Wyoming, bathing the rows of worn asphalt in a haze of golden heat. Outside the lone diner, a battered sign that read, "Roadside Haven Cafe," creaked softly in a dry breeze. To passing drivers, this spot was just one more forgotten stop along an endless highway. A place to top off on diesel and maybe grab a mediocre cup of coffee. It looked like any other no-name pit stop frequented by weary truckers hauling goods across America's heartland. But that afternoon, a series of events would begin to unfold that would forever carve this place into local legend. Inside the cafe, a woman named Charlene sat alone, hunched over a well-used notebook while she sipped iced tea. She was not the image of a sleek, glamorous traveler. Instead, she was stout, broad-shouldered, with a few extra pounds that even her loose t-shirt struggled to conceal. Sweat shone on her forehead as she reached up to adjust her baseball cap, revealing strands of curly, damp hair. If one looked no further, they might dismiss Charlene as nothing more than another overweight, middle-aged trucker who spent too long on highways and not enough time caring for herself. Yet there was something in her posture that felt coiled, like a spring forced to stay compressed. A careful observer might notice that despite her size, she had a surprising ease of movement, graceful footsteps, a casual but precise rotation of her neck as she scanned the room. Her intense hazel eyes flicked up every time the cafe door jingled, measuring each newcomer. She would return to her notebook, scribbling notes about her next haul route or perhaps something else less routine. Each page meticulously organized in a style that reflected a disciplined mind. Rumors often swirled around her, though no one knew quite how to separate fact from fiction. Some said she had spent years in the military. Others whispered she was once part of an elite unit, maybe even special forces. Most of these rumors, however, got drowned in the daily monotony of coffee refills, overheated engines, and roadside gossip. Charlene herself never offered to confirm or deny. She was simply the fat lady trucker who minded her own business and rarely raised her voice above a polite greeting. She had been stopping by this particular cafe for months now, often in transit between cross-country hauls, enough that the staff recognized her but never asked personal questions. Few realized how intricately she had planned every detail of her life. The well-maintained Kenworth rig idling outside was her fortress on wheels, packed with more than just spare tires and wrenches. A well-hidden corner in the sleeping compartment housed items that would both amaze and terrify a random onlooker. Charlene, in fact, had secrets that stretched far beyond her easy smile. If the day ever came when those secrets had to reveal themselves, it would be because she'd run out of options. As fate would have it, that day was coming sooner than anyone could guess. Charlene had finished the last of her iced tea when the jingling bell above the diner door announced a new arrival. Actually, it wasn't a single newcomer. 3 men swaggered in together. They were clad in dusty black leather jackets, emblazoned with a flaming skull on the back, heavy boots thumping against the linoleum floor. Their bare arms were riddled with tattoos, snakes, daggers, and cryptic symbols. The combined odor of stale beer and sweat immediately permeated the small diner, pricking everyone's senses. The staff behind the counter eyed them warily. On any typical day, a truck stop might see its fair share of interesting characters. This was, after all, the open road. But these 3 carried themselves with a different air. There was something predatory in their gaze, as if they had arrived not just for a meal, but to scout territory. They chose a booth near the back, away from the big front windows, which were coated with dust and midday glare. As they passed Charlene's table, one of them, an especially tall biker with a scraggly beard, lingered for a moment, letting his gaze linger on her. A sneer tugged at his lip, but he moved on without speaking. Charlene pretended not to notice, turning her attention back to her notebook. Inside, though, her senses sharpened. She recalled rumors swirling around the highways in recent months. A new biker gang was making a name for itself by muscling in on local establishments, forcing owners to pay protection fees, and sometimes worse. Truckers talked of stolen hauls and burned-out warehouses. The pattern was consistent. Start with a few minor threats, and if the business owner didn't comply, a rapid escalation to full-scale intimidation. More than once, she'd heard about truckers being run off the road. While she had never encountered them directly, the stories were troubling enough to make anyone cautious. The diner's waitress, a kind-faced older woman named Martha, approached the biker's booth cautiously, pen and pad trembling in her hands. The tall biker barked an order for burgers and beers. Martha explained they didn't serve alcohol, but he just grunted in annoyance. Another one, stockier and heavily tattooed, made a half-hearted attempt at flirting, which only served to make Martha more uncomfortable. When she hurried away with their food orders, the men started talking in low voices, occasionally casting glances around the diner. Charlene acted like she was lost in her notes, but every word they spoke reached her ears. It was mostly small talk about heading further west for bigger opportunities. They grumbled about some boss who was pressuring them to take care of business more aggressively. Most interestingly, they mentioned plans to intimidate the owners of local truck stops that wouldn't cooperate. Charlene couldn't ignore the spike of adrenaline coursing through her. This place, Roadside Haven Cafe, was beloved by long-haul truckers for its friendly staff and fair prices. She could guess what a gang like this had in mind. Either they wanted to push the owners around, or possibly seize the property for themselves to expand whatever criminal enterprise they ran. As Charlene surreptitiously studied them, she felt a twinge of anger stirring deep within. These men, with their casual brutality, had no idea what lines they might be crossing. For now, she kept her eyes on her notebook, feigning calm, but her mind was already working through possibilities. Where the exits were, how many hidden weapons she might have to employ if things went south. She silently hoped it wouldn't come to that. Unfortunately, she knew all too well that bullies rarely stopped at a mere show of force. Over the next half hour, the mood in the diner soured. The bikers grew louder, occasionally erupting in crude laughter that disrupted the nervous hush among the other patrons. In a corner booth, a young mother tried to keep her two small children calm, desperately hoping to avoid unwanted attention. A pair of older ranch hands who had been sipping coffee exchanged tense looks and decided to leave before the situation turned uglier. Charlene quietly closed her notebook and set it aside, then motioned for another iced tea refill. Martha, still rattled, brought it over but spilled a few drops on the table. Charlene gave her a reassuring nod, noticing the faint tremor in the older woman's hands. The tension in the room was thick. Charlene's instincts, honed from years in uniform, were telling her something bad was about to unfold. She wasn't wrong. The tall biker, who seemed to be the de facto leader of the trio, finished his burger with a loud belch and shoved the plate away. With a sneer, he called Martha over. "Hey, old lady," he said, tapping two greasy fingers on the table. "What say you talk to the owner about cutting us a special deal, huh? My brothers and I plan on stopping by a lot more often." The underlying tone of threat was obvious. Martha mustered enough courage to speak up. I can't make deals. I only take orders. You'll have to speak with the manager if you're looking for something else." Another biker, the stockier one, snorted. "Yeah, we'd like to speak with whoever runs this joint. Tell him we can ensure nothing bad ever happens around here for a small fee." His smirk was as cold as a rattlesnake's glare. Charlene felt her jaw tighten. It was the classic shakedown line, one she'd encountered in war-torn places overseas. Thugs offering protection, when in reality, they were the exact danger from which people needed protecting. For a moment, she pictured a dusty village halfway around the world, where local bandits pulled the same con. She'd helped to put a stop to that once, using expertise that few in her current life suspected she possessed. Inside the kitchen, the cafe's owner, a stout man named Don, emerged with a spatula still in hand. He wore an apron stained with fryer grease and had the weary look of someone who'd spent most of his life working around hot grills. Approaching the bikers, He forced a polite smile. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" They regarded him coolly. "No problem," said the tall one, leaning back in the booth. "Just offering you a little business arrangement. We'd hate to see anything bad happen to this lovely establishment. Accidents do occur on lonely highways, especially with so many trucks around. Know what I mean?" Don's knuckles turned white on the spatula. "We don't need that kind of arrangement here," he said as calmly as he could. "This cafe's been fine for over 20 years without any accidents, and I'd appreciate if you let us continue our business in peace." One of the men barked a laugh. "Oh, you'd appreciate that, huh? Well, maybe we'll just come by tomorrow and show you how quickly things can change." Charlene watched Don's face redden, but she also saw the fear beneath his anger. He wasn't a fighter. He was a man who loved serving up burgers and pies, not dealing with extortionists. She could sense him struggling to hold his ground, but the tension was growing. The biker gang had singled out a target. If they didn't get what they wanted, they'd likely escalate. Though Charlene remained seated, she mentally inventoried the diner. Windows, doors, approximate angles of approach. She never liked bullies, especially those who thrived on terrorizing decent people. At this point, stepping in might save Dawn from trouble, but it might also blow her cover. In the end, she decided it was better to wait and watch. The time for direct intervention would come soon enough. The bikers eventually swaggered out of the diner without paying, leaving half-eaten plates scattered on the table. Their unspoken message was clear. They owned the place now, at least in their own minds. A hush fell over the cafe as the rumble of the men's motorcycles reverberated outside. Everyone inside seemed to exhale at once when the noise faded into the distance. Don ran a shaky hand through his thinning hair. Martha patted his shoulder, whispering words of comfort. Charlene downed the last of her iced tea, rose from her chair, and approached Don. She asked quietly, "Are you all right?" He tried to give a confident nod, but couldn't quite pull it off. "I'm fine," he replied, though his voice wavered. "Just, look, I don't know what's going on, but I can't afford to pay thugs like that. Not on my margins." Charlene understood. Truck stops like this survived on tight budgets, relying on a steady stream of traveling customers. The owners rarely had big savings, and any extra money went into maintaining equipment or staff salaries. Extortion demands could bankrupt a place in no time. She gently placed a hand on his arm. "If you need anything," she said softly, "just let me know. My rig is parked out back, and I'm here for the evening." Don managed a grateful smile, not fully realizing the depth of her offer. "Thank you," he murmured, "but I wouldn't want you to get involved. Those guys look dangerous, and I wouldn't ask a customer to put themselves in harm's way." Charlene simply nodded, not pressing the issue. She left enough cash on the table to cover her meal, plus a generous tip for Martha, and headed outside. The sun was still beating down, but a cooler wind had started to drift across the parking lot. Her Kenworth truck gleamed in the light, a fortress of metal and horsepower. She climbed into the cab, shut the door, and settled into the driver's seat. A soft hum filled the space as she turned on a small generator to power her built-in mini-fridge and communications equipment. In a hidden compartment beneath her bunk, she rummaged through a set of items that looked far too advanced for a simple trucker. A portable night vision scope, a kit for field dressings, and even a matte black pistol that bore no manufacturer's logo. Her reflection in a small mirror revealed a slight smile. The safe, ordinary life she had built over the past few years suddenly felt distant. Memories of covert missions in deserts and jungles flooded her mind, each laced with the adrenaline of danger and the satisfaction of protecting the vulnerable. Setting the gear aside, Charlene pulled out a weathered phone from another secret compartment. The phone was rugged, military-grade, with encrypted capabilities. She hesitated briefly, her thumb hovering over a contact labeled only by a single letter. She recalled the instructions she'd once been given. "If you ever need backup, dial this number. Doesn't matter where you are, we'll find a way to help." But she wasn't sure if it was time to bring old friends into this. For now, she decided to hold off. She needed more information first. Sliding the phone back into its hiding place, Charlene leaned back in her seat, eyes narrowing as she gazed out over the empty highway. She would stay nearby for the night, inconspicuous yet ready. If the bikers returned, which she suspected they would, she wanted to be on hand to assess their next move. Night draped the landscape in a blanket of deep blue. The roar of semi-trucks passing on the distant highway had subsided, leaving the truck stop eerily quiet. Charlene decided to stretch her legs, stepping out of her cab into the cool evening air. Under a flickering street lamp, she noticed Don locking up the cafe. The place usually stayed open late, but after the day's events, he seemed eager to close earlier than normal. She strolled around to the back of the building, her boots crunching over loose gravel. Crickets chirped in the dry weeds, and the faint smell of diesel clung to the night. Charlene scanned the perimeter with a practiced eye, taking note of each dark corner and potential vantage point. She found a spot near the dumpsters that overlooked the road. Leaning quietly against the wall, she let her thoughts wander back to the men who had come in earlier. In her mind, she analyzed them methodically. Their approximate ages, tattoos, posture, and the words they had let slip. She suspected they were part of a bigger organization, possibly a regional biker outfit known for racketeering and drug smuggling. The tall one was likely a lieutenant figure, someone with enough clout to handle business dealings, but not the top boss. That meant reinforcements could arrive if the situation escalated, and Charlene had little doubt it would. Her reverie was broken by the sudden growl of motorcycles in the distance. Headlights speared through the night, and soon the same trio from earlier came roaring into the truck stop parking lot, trailing a new arrival. A fourth biker, heavier set and with an intimidating presence. They circled slowly, scanning the parked trucks. Charlene felt her muscles tense. She reached into her jacket pocket, fingers brushing the outline of a small flashlight that doubled as a strobe device. The bikes rolled to a stop near the diner's side entrance. Charlene crouched behind a crate of spare auto parts, watching intently. The men dismounted and began walking around, peering into trucks' cabins, occasionally kicking at tires as if searching for someone or something. She guessed they were looking for Dawn or perhaps planning to vandalize the property as a fear tactic. A few moments later, one of them spotted the soft glow of a light inside the Kenworth's cab. Charlene had left a small reading lamp on, a deliberate choice in case she needed to bait them into revealing their intentions. The stocky biker gestured for the others to follow, and they started toward her truck. Charlene's heartbeat remained steady, a testament to her training. In a slow, silent motion, she removed the strobe flashlight from her pocket. She counted the footsteps as they drew nearer, waiting until they were just a few yards away. With a swift movement, she clicked on the strobe feature, aiming it at eye level. A disorienting burst of white light flashed against the darkness. The bikers shouted in surprise, momentarily blinded. Charlene used those seconds to move. She darted out from her hiding place, covering ground with a speed that belied her physique. One biker stumbled back, cursing, hands up to shield his eyes. Another fell to one knee. Before they could recover, Charlene had circled behind them, quiet as a breeze. Her instincts roared to life. Take control of the situation. Incapacitate. Avoid lethal force if possible. She carefully sized them up, ready to unleash a skill set that only a few in this world truly understood she possessed. The glare of the strobe faded, and the bikers turned to find themselves facing a woman they had dismissed earlier as an easy target. Now she stood tall, arms tensed, feet planted in a stance that spoke of professional combat training. The scraggly bearded leader rubbed his eyes, scowling at the shape before him. "You!" he snarled, voice brimming with confusion and anger. "What the hell are you doing?" Charlene didn't respond with words. Instead, she raised one hand, gesturing for them to back away from her truck. She knew from experience that intimidation tactics could sometimes diffuse a fight before it got out of hand. Unfortunately, these men were unlikely to be intimidated. Sure enough, the stocky biker sneered and lunged forward. Her reaction was instantaneous. She sidestepped his wild swing with deceptive grace, pivoting on her heel to deliver a precise strike with the edge of her hand. It caught him just above the elbow, sending a jolt through his arm. He yelped, stumbling sideways. Another biker rushed her from behind, but Charlene was ready. She half-turned, used his momentum against him, and guided him face first into the side of her truck. A dull clang reverberated as he sprawled across the gravel. The remaining two blinked in astonishment. They hadn't expected a fat lady trucker to move like a panther. Now they realized they were dealing with something far more dangerous. Yet their egos couldn't let them back down. The tall leader clenched his fists, adopting a boxer's stance, while the new arrival, The heavy-set biker with the menacing aura circled to Charlene's side. Charlene breathed in, keeping her pulse steady. These men were bigger than her, and a frontal assault could be risky. She recalled countless training sessions at an undisclosed Delta Force facility, where she had learned to turn size differences into advantages. The key was footwork, timing, and staying calm under pressure. The heavy-set biker feigned a hook, trying to draw her attention, while the leader lunged from the other side. Charlene recognized the tactic instantly. She ducked below the leader's swinging arm and delivered a sharp knee to his midsection. He let out a guttural groan. Simultaneously, she spun to face the heavy-set man, blocking his attempt to grab her. Instead of letting him overpower her, she clamped onto his wrist, twisted it downward, and swept his legs out with a swift kick. He crashed onto his back, a surprised grunt escaping his lips. Gasping for breath, the tall leader doubled over, his face contorted in pain and disbelief. The two who had initially rushed her were regaining their footing, albeit more cautiously. Charlene realized she was now ringed by 4 men, all glaring at her with a mixture of rage and confusion. She waited, scanning them for the next move, her body poised in readiness. It was then that the leader's eyes zeroed in on Charlene's stance. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. Maybe he had seen a similar skill set in someone else before. Her measured movements, precise strikes, and composure under fire hinted at advanced combat training. For a moment, he seemed to lose his bravado. "Who are you?" he demanded, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. Charlene took a slow breath, adrenaline zinging through her veins. She locked eyes with him and replied in a low, steady voice, "Just a truck driver trying to enjoy some peace and quiet." Then she braced herself, knowing this wasn't over. A tense silence stretched across the truck stop parking lot, punctuated only by the muffled hum of distant highway traffic. The 4 bikers formed a loose semicircle around Charlene, breathing heavily, each deciding whether to flee or strike again. Their pride was stung, and men like these rarely walked away without exacting some form of payback. The bearded leader spat on the ground. "You'll regret messing with us," he growled, still clutching his side. "We own this territory now. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Charlene maintained her composure, though her heart pounded. She'd faced worse odds before, but it had been some time since she'd engaged in a real fight. Muscle memory took over, but she remained wary of underestimating them. They might be amateurs compared to her Delta Force background, yet all it took was one lucky shot to land her in serious trouble. Seeing that intimidation alone wasn't going to break her resolve, the leader let out a harsh whistle. Suddenly, the rumble of additional engines pierced the night air. More bikes were approaching, possibly half a dozen or so, judging by the roar. Charlene's stomach churned. She risked a quick glance toward the main road and saw the glow of headlights. Reinforcements had arrived. Though her instincts clamored for her to launch a preemptive strike, Charlene instead reached for the small radio unit clipped to her belt. She flicked it on, already tuned to a private channel. If Don or any other innocent bystanders were still around, they might need a warning. "Stay inside, lock the doors," she whispered into the radio, hoping someone was listening. The newcomers skidded into the parking lot, their headlights cutting across the darkness. 5 more bikers dismounted. One of them, taller and more imposing than the rest, strode forward. He wore a sleeveless vest revealing muscular arms covered in elaborate tattoos. A thick silver chain dangled from his neck, and his expression radiated a hardened menace. He surveyed the scene, his men nursing bruises, Charlene standing there unscathed, and he let out a low, humorless chuckle. "So you're the one causing all this trouble?" he asked, voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Trouble walked in on its own," Charlene replied evenly, nodding toward the battered trio. "I'm just trying to keep it from getting out of hand." Laughter rippled among the newly arrived bikers, though it held no warmth. The big man stepped closer, towering over Charlene. His eyes flicked over her like a predator, sizing up prey. "You don't look like much," he said, "but I've seen amateurs get lucky before. Maybe that's all this is." Charlene inhaled slowly, forcing her pulse to steady. She had spent years mastering the art of psychological warfare, reading micro-expressions and body language to gauge threats. She could tell this man wasn't completely reckless. He was an enforcer, someone who knew the advantage of overwhelming force. If there was a moment to defuse the situation, it was slipping away fast. Keeping her voice calm, she spoke. "We don't need this to escalate. You walk away now, nobody gets hurt." He smirked, revealing a missing tooth. "Too late for that, lady." With a jerk of his head, he commanded the fresh arrivals to spread out, flanking Charlene on both sides. She felt the tension ratchet up another notch. This was rapidly turning into a situation that might require more than hand-to-hand skills. Her mind flitted back to her truck, where more formidable tools lay concealed. The question was whether she could get to them before the bikers swarmed her. Blood throbbed in Charlene's ears as she weighed her options. The newly arrived bikers were spreading out, tightening the noose around her. She guessed at least two had firearms tucked away, judging by the way their jackets bulged near the waist. If they all attacked at once, hand-to-hand might not be enough. Across the lot, she saw a flicker of movement near the diner door. Dawn, peeking out to see what was happening. Her heart sank. She didn't want him or anyone else to get caught in the crossfire. Time slowed as she ran through scenarios. There was little chance of diplomatic resolution now. These men were spoiling for a fight, and they had numbers on their side. She pivoted smoothly, inching toward her truck while keeping her gaze locked on the big man, who appeared to be the ringleader. He nodded to one of his underlings, who lunged forward, a glint of metal in his hand. A switchblade. Charlene sidestepped, grappling his wrist and forcing it downward until the blade clattered to the ground. A swift strike to his ribs sent him reeling back with a pained grunt. But the others took this as their cue to rush her. She ducked beneath a wild punch, elbowing its owner in the solar plexus. Another came from behind, trying to tackle her around the waist. She dropped her center of gravity, hooking her leg behind his knee to bring him crashing down. Despite her success, she could feel the tide turning. These bikers were no slouches, and it was only a matter of time before they overwhelmed her with sheer numbers. A sudden click echoed in the night. The big man stood a few paces away, leveling a pistol at Charlene. "Enough games," he snarled, chest heaving. "On your knees, or I paint this parking lot with your brains." Charlene froze, calculating. Dropping to her knees would make her vulnerable. Staying upright meant risking a bullet to the head. She glanced around for anything that might tip the scales, but before she could make a move, a pair of headlights swept across the scene. A sleek black SUV screeched into the lot, halting just behind the row of motorcycles. The doors flew open, revealing two figures in tactical gear. They moved with lethal efficiency, raising firearms that glinted under the flickering overhead lamp. One of them, a tall woman with cropped hair, barked in a commanding voice, "Drop your weapons, now!" The bikers hesitated, confusion flashing in their eyes. The big man wavered, his pistol still aimed at Charlene, but the presence of two heavily armed newcomers seemed to rattle him. Charlene seized the moment. With a lightning-fast move, she pivoted her body and disarmed the leader, twisting his wrist until he cried out and let the gun fall. She followed through with a kick that knocked him off balance. The rest of the gang scrambled, some reaching for their own guns, but the pair from the SUV were quicker on the draw. Shots rang out, loud, commanding blasts into the air. "Weapons down, or you will be fired upon," the tall woman repeated. Realizing they were outmatched and outgunned, the bikers relented. They slowly raised their hands. Fear and frustration etched across their faces. Charlene breathed a ragged sigh of relief, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She glanced at the tall woman who had saved the day. Recognition flickered in Charlene's eyes. An old comrade from her military past. A stunned hush settled over the parking lot. The bikers stood in a sullen group, hands raised, while the tall woman and her partner kept them covered. Charlene shook off the lingering combat haze and walked over to join her unexpected allies. "Took you long enough," Charlene said, managing a faint grin despite the tension. The woman lowered her firearm slightly, allowing a ghost of a smile to appear. "You know me, Charlie. Gotta make an entrance." Her eyes flicked to the battered bikers. "I'd say you handled yourself just fine, but it looked like you could use a hand." Charlene chuckled, the sound tinged with relief. "Wouldn't say no to it. I guess I hit that speed dial in the nick of time." Indeed, in a moment of desperation, Charlene had used the encrypted phone in her cab. She'd made a call to the old Delta Force contact listed only by an initial. She hadn't been sure if anyone would respond or if the line even still worked. But here stood her answer. Living proof that some bonds forged in secret missions never fade. The tall woman's partner, a wiry man with sharp features, produced a set of zip ties. He began restraining the bikers, lining them up along the curb. The big leader glared daggers at Charlene. "You think you've won?" he spat. "We got more men. We got connections. You'll be looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life." Charlene knelt down, meeting his hostile gaze. "I've spent most of my life in war zones," she said softly. "If you think I'm scared of a two-bit gang, you haven't seen real fear." The man's bravado wavered. He glanced at the pair of armed newcomers and realized, perhaps for the first time, that Charlene was no ordinary opponent. With a frustrated snarl, he clammed up, refusing to speak further. Don, who had been watching from the diner entrance, finally mustered the courage to step outside. He approached slowly, eyes darting between the subdued bikers and Charlene's allies. Is it safe now?" he asked, voice trembling with a mixture of anxiety and relief. "It will be," Charlene assured him. "My friends here will make sure these guys end up where they belong. And if there's more of them out there, well, we'll be ready." Martha peeked out as well, tears shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she breathed, clutching a dish rag to her chest. "I don't know how to repay you." Charlene gave her a gentle smile. "No repayment needed. You folks feed me every time I pass through. Consider us even." The tall woman holstered her weapon and turned to Charlene. "We'll call in the local authorities," she said. "Give a heads up to some federal contacts, too. This gang's been on the radar for a while. They've been smuggling narcotics, extorting small businesses, the whole 9 yards. We've got enough to put them away for a long time." Nodding in agreement, Charlene took a moment to let the reality sink in. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the adrenaline still pulsed in her veins. She walked over to her Kenworth and leaned against the fender, drawing in a steadying breath. The tension of the night's confrontation slowly ebbed, leaving behind a calm but vigilant awareness. She knew this might not be the last time she'd have to rely on her old skills. Bullies and criminals came in many forms, and there was always another threat lurking somewhere. Yet in this moment, she allowed herself a hint of satisfaction. Dawn was safe, the cafe was secure, and the bikers were in custody. The dusty truck stop might finally have a chance to return to the quiet, unassuming place it had been before. By dawn, the truck stop had settled into a subdued calm. County deputies arrived under the cover of early morning light, their red and blue strobes painting the parking lot. They took statements, snapped photographs of the scuffed pavement, and loaded the bikers into patrol cars. The big leader kept his gaze locked on Charlene, muttering curses under his breath, but he said nothing more of consequence. The local authorities were more than happy to accept the assistance of Charlene's two friends, and the trio of specialized operatives quietly melted away before too many questions could be asked. Standing by the diner's entrance, Don and Martha watched the spectacle unfold. They both wore expressions of gratitude mingled with disbelief, as though they still couldn't fathom how a single truck driver, someone they had known only as a quiet regular, had thwarted a criminal gang. At one point, Don approached Charlene and offered a trembling handshake. "You saved this place, you know," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I can't thank you enough." Charlene gave a modest shrug. "Just doing what had to be done," she said, her words carrying the weight of countless times she had uttered a similar phrase in different conflict zones around the world. "I've seen enough bullies in my life. Didn't want to stand by and watch them take over your cafe." Martha, eyes still brimming with tears, gave Charlene a tight hug, ignoring the sweat and dust that clung to her clothes. "If you ever pass through again," she whispered, "you'll always have a seat at the counter and a slice of pie waiting for you." Inwardly, Charlene felt a warmth she rarely allowed herself. She had lived much of her post-military life on the road, drifting from one hall to the next, never getting too close to anyone for fear of her past catching up. But here, she found genuine kindness, people who looked beyond her appearance and appreciated what she'd done. She spent the next hour talking with the deputies, giving a careful statement that glossed over the more specialized aspects of her skill set. The local sheriff, a grizzled man with decades on the force, raised an eyebrow at her story. "Delta Force, huh?" he murmured, half suspecting the truth, but lacking the inclination to pry. "I've met a few of you folks over the years. Always turn up in the most unexpected places." Charlene simply smiled. "Can't confirm or deny," she replied gently, an echo of her training. The sheriff nodded knowingly and didn't push the matter further. Eventually the sun rose fully, casting long beams of light that made the gas pumps and the diner sign glow in a fresh day's promise. The truck stop was returning to normal, the tension of the night evaporating like morning dew. Big rigs began rolling in again, their drivers curious about the unusual police presence. Dawn went back to flipping pancakes on the grill, and Martha returned to pouring coffee refills, as though determined to reestablish the comforting routine that had been threatened just hours earlier. Charlene climbed into her Kenworth, preparing for her next long haul. She had miles to cover, cargo to deliver. As she settled into the driver's seat, she glanced at herself in the mirror. The reflection showed an overweight woman, hair slightly disheveled and face lined with fatigue. But behind those hazel eyes there was a resolute spirit born of trials few would ever comprehend. Before she shifted into gear, Charlene allowed a fleeting smile. She felt no need to broadcast her past achievements or her extraordinary capabilities. After all, to most of the world she was just another trucker, laboring along endless highways. But to those who had witnessed the previous night's events, she was a reminder never to judge by appearances. And should any other gang of bullies dare test her mettle, well, they would soon learn they'd picked the wrong woman to push around. The engine roared, and with a hiss of air brakes, Charlene pulled out of the lot. She gave a final wave to Dawn and Martha, who stood side by side in front of the cafe. The roadside Haven Cafe grew smaller in her rearview mirror, returning to the peaceful existence it had known for decades. Yet in that small corner of the Wyoming plains, the legend of the fat truck driver who brought an entire biker gang to its knees would be told for years. Because beneath that unassuming exterior lay the indomitable spirit of a Delta Force operative, proof that heroism can reside in the most unexpected of packages. As dawn breaks over the Wyoming plains, peace returns to the roadside diner, a true slice of America saved by one unlikely hero. Charlene, once mocked for her appearance, proved beyond a doubt that strength comes in unexpected forms and courage never retires. Her Delta Force training wasn't just a past life, it was her secret weapon in a fight for justice and community. The defeated biker gang learned a hard lesson. Never mess with the quiet patriot who lives by honor and integrity. This story reminds us all that real American values like bravery, loyalty, and protecting our own are alive and well. Now it's your turn. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed a hidden hero step up in your own community? Let's celebrate those who defend our values together.